Hey moviegoers, did Sony botch another Spider-Verse film? Let's find out as I review the newest Spider-Verse film, Kraven the Hunter. The movie will be rated in 5 categories: plot, acting, cinematography, soundtrack, entertainment value, and lastly, an overall score will be given. These categories will be rated on a 10-point scale. 0 to 2 is hot garbage, 2 to 4, bad, 4 to 6, average, 6 to 8, good, and 8 to 10 is amazing. Sony. What is your problem? I mean, where do I begin with this movie? It had so much promise, yet you fumbled the bag once again. But before we get into that, let's break it down with the 5 categories. The first one is the plot. This movie's plot was just meh. It wasn't exciting. It was hard to follow at times, and they had a lot of flashbacks in the movie, but the flashbacks that they had, they didn't explain anything. They didn't help to advance the plot at all or very little. So, and they took up a lot of time. A lot of flashbacks, taking up a lot of time, doing very little to explain anything that moved the plot forward. The villains were weak. The one villain they have in there is Rhino, and I like the concept that they used for Rhino in this movie, but beyond that, the villain itself was just weak. The way they handled him was weak. They fumbled the bag on it again. Like they had a character, a new imagining of this character, and they could have done so much more with it, but then they just botched it. They have a secondary villain in this movie, which they don't explain anything. He has some certain type of powers, and they don't explain, what these are or why they're doing it. He has very little of a backstory on why he's doing what he's doing. You get a little bit of it, but not enough to make you intrigued or think that he has a reason to do what he's doing. So the secondary villain is weak. There is a secondary protagonist named Calypso in this movie, and again, this is another character where they don't give much of any backstory. They give a very little bit of a backstory, but that backstory doesn't do anything to advance the overall plot of the movie. And all 3 of these characters, this Calypso character, the Rhino, and the secondary villain, they all have immense potential, and they could have added so much more and so much more depth to this movie, and they just didn't. Sony just put them in there and just said, well, we needed other people in the movie apparently, so we're just going to do that. So I will give the plot of this movie a 5.0. It had potential, but they just didn't do anything with that potential. Now, the acting, Aaron Taylor Johnson was phenomenal in this movie. His action sequences were great. This man was absolutely shredded for this movie. He did a good job. He connected, I think, with the audience and connected his character with the audience. So he did a good job doing that. Russell Crowe's in this film, but he's got a very minimal role. And the times that he is in the movie, there's just no room for him to use his acting chops. He's a really good actor, and I just think he just didn't have any space to use the brilliance of his acting career to make this movie better. Again, great actor, no room to move, just left you wanting more. The villains did, I think, the best what they could with the writing for their character. They tried their best, but again, they were hamstrung. They had their hands tied behind their backs trying to make something good that they weren't able to make good because of the writing for the movie. And the supporting cast was just okay. Again, they did the best with what they could, and they didn't have much to work with. So because of that, they tried. Aaron Taylor Johnson was great, so I'll give the acting a 6.5 in this movie. The cinematography was probably the highlight of the movie, is that the action scenes were really good. They drew you in. They were action packed, and they were definitely the highlight of the movie. There was some sketchy CGI in the movie at times, but not too much. It wasn't that bad. But again, the best part of the movie was the action sequences, and that's probably the most redeeming quality of this movie. And because of that, I'm going to give the cinematography a 7.5. The soundtrack of the movie was just, there's nothing to it. There wasn't much of a soundtrack in the movie. Like, there was nothing, it didn't add anything to the movie. It didn't subtract anything to the movie. There was just some type of music in the background. I couldn't tell you anything. I couldn't hum a tune from that movie at all. Like, it just was there. And so because of that, I'm going to give that a 5.0. There's not much really to say about the soundtrack. As for entertainment value, Aaron Taylor Johnson held this movie afloat. He did a great job in his acting. He did a great job in his action sequences. He made you want to invest into the character of Kraven the Hunter. It made you want to know more about this character of Kraven the Hunter. I think he did a really good job, and he was very entertaining in this movie. But this movie overall left you wishing that it was better. You could see the potential that it had, and it just never manifested. And it just left you wishing that they just would have done more with this movie. Like I said, the action sequences are good, and that helped out, but it was slow. There were times in this movie where I started scrolling on my phone because there wasn't much going on action-wise. There wasn't much going on developing the plot. It was just something on the screen that you really didn't need to see for anything. And so because of that, I just found myself scrolling on my phone, which is never a good thing when you're trying to be entertained. It wasn't a whole lot in the movie. I would just say it was just times here and there, but you never want to be looking to scroll on your phone to take your mind to somewhere else because what's on the screen just isn't keeping your attention. So because of that, the entertainment value I'm going to give as a 6.0. Now, overall, like I say, the movie, it left you wanting more. There were some highlights to the movie. There are definitely a lot of lowlights to the movie. Was it entertaining? Sure. If this movie was on television, I probably would watch it if nothing else was on. But beyond that, I will give this movie overall a 5.8. It was slightly better than average, but not much. It was just a very average movie. When it comes to the Sonyverse, I mean, it's not as good as Venom was, but it probably was better than a lot of the other crap that they have in the Sonyverse, because the Sonyverse is just terrible outside of Spider-Man. Venom is decent. This didn't meet Venom. It came in behind Venom, but it was probably better than everything else that Sony has done in their Sonyverse. So again, 5.8 overall. Oh man, it could have been so much better. It could have been the best movie that Sony has done outside of Spider-Man in their Spider-Verse, but they just fumbled the bag once again. They just do not know how to make a Spider-Man Spider-Verse movie. So until next time, everyone, I'll see ya.